in terms of the level of participation, but it's also exceptional in terms of the billing that is given to it by the European Union. And for me, my name is David Navarro, and I work on nutrition and have done so for many years. For me, this is such a fantastic moment. We are here seeing nutrition, an issue that has really risen up and become particularly significant in the development discourse. We're seeing it given top billing in this year's Development Days with this special session. And the title is interesting. It's Joining Forces to Make Undernutrition History. And that's very similar to what we were saying 10 years ago about making poverty history. And I think it's a reflection, and you'll hear this from the panelists, it's a reflection of our understanding that people who have been hungry and undernourished, particularly in early life, are just unable to contribute fully to the development of themselves, their communities, and their nations. And that recognition is now not just being expressed by by scientists, it's being expressed by heads of government, and as we'll hear in a minute, by some very senior global public figures. So let's listen to what our panelists have to say. If we can do things reasonably quickly, there might also be space to receive some of your comments. Don't hesitate to grab my attention. I much prefer it to be free-flowing if we can make it that way. Now, Mr. Mimica is going to be very evident to everybody during these development days because he is the European Union Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development. He's a Croatian politician and a diplomat, and I'm really pleased, sir, that you are hosting us today in this important event. And I'd love it if you could give us your quick views about how we can together make undernutrition history a thing of the past. So, wherever you like.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends. We are all here today at the European Development Days because we are convinced that together we can build a better world. Despite all the goodwill and efforts planned or underway, we will not realize this dream if we ignore the problem of undernutrition. Some progress has been made over the past 2 decades to reduce undernutrition. However, more than 160 million children under 5 are stunted. And for me, 160 million hungry children simply is 160 million too many. Undernutrition remains the principal cause of death for over 3 million children every year. This is a personal tragedy for the children and their families affected. Their life chances for education, employment, and earning an income are severely compromised. But it is also a tragedy for the larger economy, which suffers significantly losses through the unmet potential of these children. This is unacceptable and in contradiction with the EU values of equity and solidarity. In response to this tragedy, the European Union has decided to act and has made 2 strong commitments. The first one, to support partner countries to reduce the number of stunted children aged under 5 by 7 million by 2025. The second one is to commit 3.5 billion euros for nutrition interventions by 2020. I am pleased to see that over the last few years, the mobilization of the international community has succeeded in bringing together efforts on nutrition through the World Health Assembly targets, the Sun Movement, the UK-led Nutrition for Growth event, and more recently the second International Conference on Nutrition in Rome. We must continue to pool our efforts to keep undernutrition high on the international and national agenda. This year, the new Sustainable Development Goals offer a great opportunity to focus on nutrition, and particularly on children and women. Political mobilization is essential, but not sufficient. Now more than ever, we also need to translate our commitments into effective actions and be accountable for delivering tangible results on the ground. I'm delighted that many of our partners are actively responding to the undernutrition challenge and are making impressive progress in reducing undernutrition. Bangladesh and Ethiopia are two emblematic examples. Indeed, despite being a low-income country and having few natural resources, they have demonstrated that stunting can be substantially reduced, respectively from 60% to 40% over 15 years in Bangladesh, and from 67% to 40% over 20 years in Ethiopia. This has been possible thanks to commitments of partner governments and an effective cooperation between the government and all the donors around the integrated approach on nutrition. The European Union will continue to intensify its nutrition actions in partner countries. More than 40 partner countries have requested our support to strengthen their capacities on nutrition for the next period up to 2020. At the same time, the European Union will pay particular attention to strengthen nutrition knowledge. In other words, identify what works for nutrition and what doesn't work. In this context, I am very pleased that after extensive consultation and design, the European Commission is now launching the National Information Platforms for Nutrition. This initiative will enable partner countries to assess the effectiveness of nutrition interventions and help them to design well-informed nutrition policies. The initiative will benefit all stakeholders active in the nutrition area, and many of them have understood the added value and power of the National Information Platforms for Nutrition. I would like personally to thank the United Kingdom's Department for International Development and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for their generous support to the initiative. In conclusion, it is only by working together in partnership that we can eliminate undernutrition. I am personally committed to leading the European Union in this long-term goal and to joining with partners to deliver this ambition in a coherent manner. I am encouraged by the progress made so far, but the bulk of the work still lies ahead of us. Ensuring that our commitments and plans translate at country level will lead to improved nutrition for all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So, Commissioner, in that short speech, you described the extraordinary commitment that has been made by Europe, particularly to ensure that the activity leads to results and to put in place mechanisms to help ensure that those results are actually demonstrated. And you spoke about how countries have come together as part of a global movement that will transform the way in which nutrition happens. Thank you for your leadership, sir. And moving now to another leader who we've already heard from during today's Development Day, during the opening session, it's with extraordinary pleasure that I have the chance to introduce to you Melinda Gates of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Just 2.5 weeks ago, we were together at a rather exciting moment when Melinda Gates received an award on behalf of Bill and Melinda Gates from Helen Keller International, a major organization for countering nutritional challenges, but one that does so through empowering and encouraging action at the local level. Melinda Gates received the Spirit of Helen Keller Award and gave a memorable speech. So it's with extraordinary pleasure that I greet you here again today, and I know you're here also with some of your colleagues in the Foundation, and we look forward to hearing your views and thoughts on where nutrition fits into the broader global development architecture that you described just now. Thank you. I hope that mic works.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll just stay here to be a little bit more informal, since I did a podium speech in the previous session. I think one of the things about nutrition that has surprised us as a foundation as we've really looked at the space and been working at it in smaller ways over the last 15 years is really how much of a hidden problem nutrition is. And yet we don't talk about its effect. We talk as a world about all of these childhood deaths, but when you look at nutrition, they contribute, underlying nutrition contributes to about half of those deaths because children's immune systems aren't fully formed, because their brains don't become fully formed, it becomes hard for them to learn in school. And so it's one of these chronic underlying problems that we really haven't, I think, addressed in a large-scale way in the world. And yet that's changing, and that to me is what's so encouraging. 1 in 4 children are stunted, which means, as I said, their bodies and brains won't develop. And when you go in the developing world, some parents, it's even become almost expected that they're going to have short children because they don't even realize how bad the situation has become. And I think as a global community, we haven't focused on this. If you look at less than 1% of ODA spending is being spent on nutrition. That to me is an underinvestment. And so if we really want to be serious about children not just surviving, but actually thriving in life, then we've got to invest as a world in nutrition. I'm fortunate here to be on the stage with many of the other distinguished panelists, and I think what you're going to hear from all of us is that the world is waking up to this problem and is starting to invest in it. As you just heard from the EU Commissioner, the investment in data is key. Bill and I feel like there's no single area that we go into in the foundation where if we don't have good data, we just don't know where and how to act. And so collecting this data is fundamental to know how to act at the country level. David Navarro's been involved in the SUN, the Scaling Up Nutrition movement, for quite some time now. That's having a profound effect in places like Tanzania. Germany has food security this year on the G7 agenda, and they're talking about minerals and key vitamins for children. The UK, as you might know, hosted a landmark conference on nutrition just 2 years ago, and at that conference they committed to historic funding. They said for every £1 in funding, they would match 2 pounds of their own funding, up to £280 million. Now, Bill and I know a good thing when we see it, and we said, well, that sounds like a good time for us to step up with our investments if we're going to get a 2-to-1 return. And so that's the thing that I'm here to announce today, is that our foundation is going to double down on nutrition. We'll be spending $776 million on nutrition over the next 6 years. And we hope that that will unlock further funding from other partners, because I think the more of us that are in this work, the more of us that see what's working, we learn from one another, and then we know how to take action. We're going to work on scaling up proven solutions and on creating new solutions, new innovations in the space. I talked earlier about breastfeeding. It's the miracle nutrition intervention for newborns. We've got to get women immediately in exclusive breastfeeding, and we have some good models of what works. We also need to look at the whole first 1,000 days of life, that is from preconception all the way through the first 2 years of life. So we'll be working with women even before they become pregnant. Our plan is to focus on 5 countries, and one of our partners, the Dangote Foundation, who we've already been working with, it's great to see Zuerha Yusufi here. They do amazing work in Nigeria already on nutrition, and it's local partners that I think are really going to be the ones to know what the solutions are to match their own country needs. And then I think the last 2 things I'll just say is that we want to really connect up our agriculture work and our nutrition work. This is a place that we're not unlike others. Our foundation has been pretty siloed internally, much like the rest of the food system around the world. So we're going to bring those 2 sectors together, both internally and we hope externally, and then bring data to the problem. So when I talk about us doubling down on our investment, I can tell you that Bill and I know that isn't even nearly enough. What I'm talking about is a drop in the bucket when you think about nutrition. So it's thrilling to be able to be here with partners who really are devoted to helping all children both survive and thrive. Thanks, David.
Big clap for that one. I started working on nutrition when I was a young doctor in the Himalayas in my 20s. And I must say, I never believed that we would be discussing the issue right at the centre of the development days. And what's more, hearing the Commissioner make his commitments, hearing this extraordinary commitment from the Gates Foundation. And I think we will hear more as this discussion goes on. This is a landmark moment for nutrition. Thank you so much. So many things you said, not only the amount, but the fact that you're going to use proven and new techniques. You are going to focus on key issues like breastfeeding. You're going to go from preconception through the life cycle, and you're going to break down the silos that have so plagued this subject. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, Melinda Gates mentioned Baroness Verma, as did the Commissioner, and mentioned what DFID, the UK government, are doing. And I hope now that we can give a really special and warm welcome to Baroness Verma, who is quite new in the role that she's taken on. So it's special to see you here today. Thank you for coming, and give you a chance to express the British government's position and your own interest in the subject, and speak. Where would you feel more comfortable? Here you come. Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David, and I'm delighted to be here today, and particularly sharing a platform with such eminent speakers and a platform dominated by women for a change. It's really appropriate, given the importance of women and girls as both drivers and beneficiaries of improved nutrition. And I'd like to reiterate the sentiments of Commissioner Mamenka and Melinda Gates. Millions of children suffering from the consequences of malnutrition is a human tragedy. We know the devastating effects that this has on their physical and mental development, and how it causes lifelong effects, undermining ability to fulfill potential, threatening life chances and prospects for social mobility, and through this, undermining societies and economies. And I'd like to briefly talk about three things. Firstly, how far we've come, looking at progress since the London Nutrition for Growth Summit. And then I'd like to talk about our partnerships with many of those on this panel and how we plan to deepen these. And then finally, before looking to the future, to share our priorities as a new government. So first, progress to date. 2 years on from London Nutrition for Growth Summit, it's a useful time for us to reflect on the progress we have made. And I'm delighted to be able to report that the data published today shows that the UK remains firmly on track to exceed the ambitious spending commitments we made back in London, and our investment in this agenda will continue to rise to 2020. And equally important, since 2011, DFID has reached 24.5 million women and children with nutrition services, well exceeding our target to reach 20 million by the end of 2015. However, with the numbers of undernourished people around the world still alarmingly high, we cannot rest on our laurels. So it is vital that we continue to support countries that are committed to tackle this problem, deepen partnerships, and work together and bring others to the table. I'm delighted to be able to announce today that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's significant commitment to double their nutrition spending will unlock £115 million of further UK nutrition match funding to 2020. And in addition to that, I'd also like to announce and acknowledge that the Government of Canada, through also going beyond their nutrition for growth commitments, will unlock a further £41 million of matched UK aid for nutrition. We are delighted to be collaborating with the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, the World Bank, UNICEF and UBS Optimus Foundation in support of the new Power of Nutrition financing facility to bring new donors to nutrition. The UK will provide up to £32 million if this is matched by others. But we know it is much more than just money. With that in mind, I'd like to look to the future. We as a new UK government remained committed to this agenda and to supporting the scaling up nutrition movement. And over the next 5 years, we're committed to improving the nutrition of at least 50 million people. We look forward to the upcoming G7 summit and the 2016 Nutrition for Growth event in Rio as important opportunities to build momentum. And I can today announce that in support of this agenda, we are committing to provide an additional 5 years of support to the global scaling up nutrition movement and to supporting countries receiving the technical expertise they need, working in collaboration with the Government of Canada, alongside the important work on improved data platforms that my colleague, the Commissioner, referred to earlier. These initiatives will complement the support coming from countries who are increasingly choosing to prioritise nutrition spending within their own budgets, recognising, as we have done, that investing in nutrition is both the right thing to do and the smart thing to do. And I'd like to join my colleagues in welcoming the announcements today. The uplift in ambition being made by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is significant, and we look forward to deepening our collaborations in the months and years to come, so that future generations can be free from malnutrition. Thank you very much.
So even more good news, extraordinary. This Nutrition for Growth Summit 2012, Baroness, was an extraordinary moment, but isn't it great to see how there has actually been so much effort in the succeeding 2 years to build up a stronger platform for action that you've just described. And you mentioned how this has unlocked a lot of extra resources, plus long-term political commitment for coming 5 years for countries that are scaling up nutrition in a very special way. Lots more to say, but there's no time. In fact, we're way behind schedule. And it's with extraordinary pleasure, therefore, that we now move to our colleague Thomas Silberhorn, who is from Germany, and we've been referring to the forthcoming G7 summit, though you may not want to talk about that all the time, but that is clearly in the wind. But also, as well as that, you've been championing food and nutrition security from your own ministry, but also from the Office of the Chancellor as well, in rather a special way. Thomas, do you want to speak there or here? You have the floor.
Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by thanking the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the European Commission for hosting this important panel. And it's a great pleasure for me to be able to present Germany's commitment to the issue of nutrition. Our political message is quite simple. A world without hunger is possible. We know that malnutrition is not only a personal tragedy for millions of people worldwide. Improved nutritional status, it has been stated several times before, is also an essential precondition for sustainable development. Therefore, my minister launched a special initiative, One World, No Hunger, last year. And this initiative focuses on supporting rural development, agriculture, and food and nutrition security. We stepped up our efforts significantly this year. We will provide a total of 1.4 billion euros, that is 1/5 of our ministry's budget, and we will sustain these efforts in the years ahead of us. I'd like to highlight the two main goals of this special initiative, the two main approaches related to nutrition and two key principles of our nutrition support. The first main goal is to eradicate hunger and malnutrition. Thus, this is fully in line with the prior goals of the United Nations and the World Bank Group. Those hungry and malnourished today must gain access to adequate, affordable and healthy food as soon as possible. The initiative therefore focuses on the most vulnerable groups: pregnant women, nursing mothers and young children. The second main goal is to create and maintain the conditions that enable future generations to get access to food. And this is of growing importance in the growing world population. Our initiative focuses on 10 countries, primarily in Africa, where the food and nutritional situation is particularly insecure. The target countries include, among others, Benin, Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, Malawi, Mali, and Zambia. Our programs in these countries promote a range of interlinked measures, such as fostering innovation in the agricultural and food sectors and promoting entire value chains of food, from the field to processing all the way to the table. Nutrition is an integral part of this package. Rather than coming up with a separate strategy or program, we decided to fully embed it in the special initiative. Related to nutrition, we follow two main approaches. Firstly, we promote multi-sectoral approaches. The Global Nutrition Report that has just been presented in Berlin yesterday in Germany has made a very clear recommendation, and that is sufficient, balanced and stable nutrition cannot be secured through investment in any single sector, but requires a multidimensional, multi-sector approach. In line with this, our nutrition-sensitive programs address several sectors, such as agriculture, healthcare, education, social protection, drinking water and sanitation all at once. Activities built on existing projects of German Development Cooperation in a variety of sectors. Secondly, we are pursuing nutrition-specific interventions to address undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies, for example through our UN partners. One recent example is our support for therapeutic feeding programs for women and children in collaboration with the World Food Programme in Yemen. In addition, we are supporting agencies such as the World Food Programme in their efforts to strengthen their institutional capacity in order to better implement nutrition programs. So our approach is a two-track approach, a combination of multi-sectoral strategy with nutrition-specific interventions. The two key principles of our nutrition support I want to introduce is, first, empower to empower women. Women play a critical role as farmers, as consumers, and as mothers. We believe that supporting women is a key to improving the nutritional status of whole families and particularly children. Another key principle is partnership. Our special initiative places great emphasis on bringing different stakeholders together, including the private sector. We've also linked up with leading research institutions, and we very much appreciate the exchange and collaboration with other partners, in particular the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. With all these new investments, the special initiative will allow us to exceed our original commitments for the Nutrition for Growth Compact in 2013. For example, in 2014, Germany provided an additional $60 million for nutrition-specific interventions. And for this year, we want to sustain these efforts. With our special initiative, we want to send a strong signal to our G7 partners and to other stakeholders as well. As G7 presidency, Germany has a special responsibility. We have taken the lead to promote a broader food security and nutrition development approach. Building on previous G7 efforts to enhance food and nutrition security, we advocate to place stronger emphasis on structural change in rural areas, on responsible and sustainable investments, on food security in fragile contexts, and of course on nutrition. Germany believes that the commitment of the G7 would also send a strong signal to the international community discussing the new Sustainable Development Goals. As it stands today, nutrition is mentioned only once in the draft targets to be discussed in New York. We believe that the G7 can make a significant contribution towards integrating nutrition more prominently in the new framework. We are just a few days now away from the Elmau Summit, and we are excited about the opportunity ahead of us. But of course, we are still working on summit language, on details of deliverables in order to achieve G7 commitments to eradicate hunger. I'd like to thank our G7 partners who have supported us in this endeavor, and we count on your continued support. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
In 1999, I was involved in malaria. Malaria suddenly moved from being in the backwoods to coming centre stage because the G7 decided that they would highlight it in their discussions. I think it's fantastic that this year the G7 is going to take malnutrition and hunger very seriously. And I thank you for also indicating how you will be doing this through various routes, combining access and structural change, focusing on measurement, the Global Nutrition Report, multi-stakeholder efforts, partnerships, and really practical work at country level. Obviously, you were talking mostly about Germany, but what a fantastic example to the world. Thank you so much for your leadership and for telling us about it today. Excellent. And now I'd like to introduce Zuwaira Yusufu to you all, CEO of Nigeria's Dangote Foundation. Actually, I've heard Zuwaira Yusufu talking before, and she will explain it all. But I want to tell you what an absolute delight it is that she's here with us, not just because she's a pioneering leader, but also because she's brought private sector into working alongside other actors in an incredibly constructive way. Would you like to stay there or come here? You're comfortable there? We can just get that mic up. It'll come up now. Yeah, you're good.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the lovely introduction. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. Thank you, Melinda, for associating us with this. Just to give you a little bit of an introduction on the Dangote Group, because I realize that we're in Europe and you might not know who we are. But the Dangote Group is the largest industrial conglomerate in Africa, started by an African man. His name is Aliko Dangote. And right now we are, actually today, commissioning the opening of the new cement plant in Ethiopia. So we're the largest producers of cement in Nigeria, flour, sugar, this is what the company is doing. And also, interestingly, food. About 20 years ago, Alhaji Aliko, as we call him, started his philanthropy endeavors. As of a year and a half ago, he's actually endowed the foundation now, so we have a proper structure. I joined about 5 months ago. And the Dangote Foundation is the foundation that has the largest endowment by any African person, like any single donor in Africa, at 200 billion naira, which is about $1.25 billion. So we have some money to work with. We're clearly not as big as some other players, but in our context, we're doing a lot. To give you a sense of why we are so interested in health and nutrition. So nutrition has now become a main part of our strategy on health because, as you've heard before, and as you all know, this is a cross-cutting health issue. We in Nigeria have the misfortune of having the second highest number of deaths from malnutrition. About 300,000 people die a year from undernutrition. We also have the second largest number of stunted children, about 10 million children that are stunted every year. So this is something that we're looking to reverse. To give you a sense of the types of things that we're doing as we scale up our nutrition strategy and what we're actually doing on the ground, we have a program that's been running for about 10 years now, which is a daily feeding program in Kano, which is in the north of Nigeria, one of the areas that has the largest number of undernourished people, about 57% from the little bit of data that we have. We have a daily feeding program that feeds 10,000 people a day, 365 days a year, 3 times a day. This is one of the programs that has led us to realize, well, in addition to giving people money, we need to help them find ways to continue nourishing themselves. And that's how we started with the Economic Empowerment Program, which is where we've been giving women micro-grants to help them start a business activity. A lot of them have been in the food business, in the food processing business, to help them improve the nutritional outcomes for their children. So the types of things that we're working on right now are advocacy and using our voice to mobilize the private sector in Nigeria to address malnutrition as a problem. The DEVCO Foundation started something called the Private Sector Health Alliance for Nigeria. Actually, that was launched with Bill Gates last year. One of the objectives of this alliance is to mobilize the private sector around making investments for health. And nutrition will now be one of the issues that PSHAN tackles. As we all know, we need everybody's input. The government, donors, private sector philanthropy. We're trying to be in the private sector side and also looking to increase the amount of philanthropy that goes into Africa, which is still right now, I'm talking about local African philanthropy, still needs to be increased because I'm hearing a lot of help from the G7, and we appreciate a lot of help from donors, a lot of help from other philanthropies, like the Gates Foundation. But I think the reality is a lot of these problems have to be tackled by us ourselves there. So how do we get women to exclusively breastfeed their kids when this is the norm in most African countries anyway? How do we get away from that to fall into the formula and supplemental feeding? So getting back to our roots regarding things that actually really matter. How do we get people to grow proper, nutritious food and not sell all of it off to make money, but actually to consume some of it for themselves? Those kinds of activities is what we will be doing more of. So agricultural support, we will continue digging boreholes. There's just a lot that we're doing that I know I have 5 minutes to speak, but just to let you know that there's a large foundation in Africa called the DEVCO Foundation, trying very hard to help implement a lot of these initiatives that are out here because we cannot rely only on others bringing things to us. We need to do it ourselves. Thank you.
Again, you heard it today, you heard it in the development days. We're out of time. We knew it was going to happen. We started half an hour late, and if we go on longer, a second longer than 45 minutes after the time we actually started, I suspect we'll be in trouble. But, do you know, I'm just going to take one risk. Does anybody in the audience want to shout out and say something, a feeling, an emotion, an anxiety? Do so now. There you go. Fantastic. Let's all recognize this is an extraordinary moment. I'm just going to give you a few headings to take away. Nutrition really matters. Top billing here in the development days. Commitments are being made all over the world, and they've been made here today in front of you all. And it's people-centered, women-focused, evidence-based strategies that are being discussed. There's a focus on innovation. There's a lot of emphasis on linkages, agriculture, health, gender, and we've talked about investments, hard cash. We've seen living evidence of partnerships. We're focusing entirely on empowerment. Nutrition, good nutrition empowers, but to produce it, you need to be empowered. And most importantly, this is a transformative moment. It really is. And so thank you, Commissioner Mimicha. Special history today, and there'll be more history as this is taken forward. And on behalf of everybody, I'd like to request a really big appreciation. It's been a lot of work to get here, there'll be a lot more work, but let's reflect it now with joy. Thank you.
Are you? Yeah. Maybe now. Did you attend the whole session?
No, well, I think.
Oh, yeah, I mixed it up. Yeah, crowded.
Sorry? Must be up already. Yeah. It's well reflected. The global. Yeah.
Well, I was if you're here. Are you going to?
I mean, this morning I thought that was full.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and I don't know. Okay. I'll see you.
Try to come in. I went wait.
Only captured part of it. Yeah.
Hello.